Be on the lookout for Band-alism, the Magic City Music Forum by Bring Your Own Headphones Production, a podcast that brings you the raw truth about musicians in the Magic City, their lives, their stories, the road they traveled to get where they are. Some good, some bad, but it was what it is. Jazz and country and good old rock and roll. And of course, what I like to listen to when I'm drinking my vodka lemonade, the blues. A weekly podcast featuring local musicians. Well, Mike, welcome to the podcast. You know, I call it Band-alism, and it's a Magic City musicians forum, and I'm loving doing it. But you know, God, I've known you a long time. I think in 1973 or 74. Yeah, that's it.
I met you before then. I met you at your house, your family's house. You guys were over just west of 24th.
Yep, that's right.
What was that? Which one was that?
Miles Avenue.
On Miles over there. And I knew Les and I knew Leanne. And we came over to your house a couple times.
Yeah.
I'm sure we were studying, and it was a study group that was happening in the basement that weekend evening. And
so you're really talking study, or was it the study that I remember from the basement? Okay, yes, it was a study group.
Yeah, it was a study group.
I get it.
We were diligently cracking the books.
Sure.
On that, and decided to help each other out. But I remember I met you. That's when I met you.
Okay.
That would have been
late 70s, wouldn't it?
Well, I graduated 75, so this was would have been 71 or 70. Yeah. 72, maybe 73, somewhere in there.
You know, that sounds right, because I was, I graduated in 79.
Right.
Should have been 78. But that would have been about right, because I was in junior high when I was hanging out with Tom Aries. So I don't remember when you came over to the house, but we had a lot of people there. There was a lot of musicians that hung out there.
Thousands came through that
It was
house.
fun. That was, that's probably what shaped me more than anything, was my brothers and sisters and all the musicians they had over there. And God, I can name a ton of them. We don't have the time for that, but that was. Those were good old days.
Yeah, man. That was a lot of fun. That was the kind of thing that it's funny. You do it when you're a kid and you don't think anything about it, and you look back on it as an adult and you go, man, I was so lucky. There was such fun people.
Oh yeah.
And that was, it was a different world back then.
Oh, it was.
Music was different. It hadn't blown up and grown up into this whole big thing that it is now. Yeah. It was really, that was the days, as you well remember. And truthfully, probably one of the things that we did going over to your house was back in the day when you would go over to your friend's house and listen to an album.
Oh, yeah.
It's
the whole album.
The whole thing.
Yeah.
You put on side one, and then you all sit there.
Yeah.
You might make a comment back and forth on occasion, but you listen to the album.
Yep.
Well,
you don't do that no more.
When's the last time anybody did that?
I know. I remember back in those days down in that basement of my folks' house. Do you remember Keith Feely?
Of course.
And then he painted that big mural on our wall. Do you remember that?
I don't remember.
Oh, he painted this mermaid and waving goodbye to this ship and all these sharks and we had a black light. It was all in black light paint. So we'd go down there, turn on the black light, look at this mural, and listen to album.
Yeah.
And one of them I remember, my brother played for me, was It's a Beautiful Day. Mm-hmm. I don't remember that band a whole bunch, but I listened to something on Sirius Radio the other day, and it was It's a Beautiful Day, and I went, wow, deja vu.
Yeah, right.
But music was music.
What was
then.
that? That was that White Bird.
That's it, White Bird. That's the song. Yeah.
I think there's flutes and stuff or something on it, if I recall.
But that it was perfect for the time.
Yeah.
Because what we did back then, and I was young, but boy, that sure made life easier, didn't it?
Well, It was I don't know. I think it was a little bit cooler like that.
It was
than it is now. It'd be tough. It's funny because there's give and take to all of it.
Yeah.
And now, I mean, when we were coming up, Rod, you know it, man. You, like you were saying a minute ago, you go out, you bought the record by whoever it was.
Yeah.
You put it on the turntable. You put the tone arm on it, and you played along until you said, "Now, what did he do?" And you had to pick the thing up and put it back a little ways and learn how to play.
Yep.
But now you've got guys on YouTube saying, if you want to play a Volovetzian scale, you put your third finger and this is what you do.
Yeah.
And it's like, we didn't have that.
No.
We were like, dude, I found this thing. It's called an A chord.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I've seen
Look at this, man.
But here's one of my things about the way I learned how to play, and you, I know you have a lot of music background, but when I learned how to play, I'd learn a song, especially a solo. You would listen to it so many times, and you'd learn it. But what you learned with that was the emotion. You learned the expression of it, the dynamics, which, I mean, you probably can off of sheet music. I mean, I don't know how to read. But that was when you get done learning that lead. I mean, you had the emotion to it. You had the attacks. You had the swells. Yeah. And nowadays, you want to learn something, you can get on YouTube and watch somebody that's been playing for 3 weeks. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Oh, yeah, these are the notes.
Well, and that's the other thing, too, is you get on there and you watch these guys saying things and you go, dude, that's not right.
Yeah.
You're wrong. What? That's not right.
Yeah.
And you're going, and then how much these young players are picking up the wrong stuff, or it's not what he called it. That's not what that is.
Right.
Or whatever it would be.
Yeah. I know. And music's changed. Here's another thing I think about back then, in the mid 70s and early 70s when I was listening to music and learning how to play.
Right.
We had so much good music, and it's probably my age, but God, the music back then, I listen to that music still. And we'll talk about Rick Derringer coming up here. But Johnny Winters and Rick Derringer were two of my shaping music styles.
Absolutely. Anybody who was playing a guitar or a bass or even a set of drums and was learning rock, which is based in the blues, and so you got to be conversant in the blues.
Yeah.
And there's no way you don't look at both those guys and say, this is the direction I will be pursuing for a while.
Yeah. And another guy, and this might sound odd because I'm a rock and roller, but was Jerry Garcia from the Grateful Dead. Mm-hmm. I loved listening to his solos and his the way he would phrase them and stuff. I mean, that guy was pretty creative. Music was out there.
Yeah.
But I liked him a lot.
Well, a lot of people did.
Yeah. Evidently.
Yeah. Those guys did okay.
Yeah.
It's funny, man. I never was. There's sort of two schools of humans, and they're the ones who got into the Grateful Dead and the ones who didn't. And it was you're being a guitar player. I can see how it would have affected you differently than my primary instrument as a kid, and throughout my entire life really has been the bass guitar.
Yeah.
But that music it wasn't about that because when we were kids, I grew up on the Beatles and the Beach Boys, really, too. Yeah. And then I was lucky. I was in a couple in a band or two in town, an Odyssey with Joe Link and Joe Sullivan and Scott Witcherly.
I know
was
those
in
guys
that band
really well.
And then I was so lucky that Vern Black and Rick Davidson came over to the house one day and said, "We need a bass player."
Yeah.
And they had this band, the Black and White Affair.
Oh man.
And because of that, because of the influences of that, which was predominantly, of course, Vern Black, I learned how to play funk and R&B.
Yeah.
And as a bass player, there is no more music on the face of the planet. The rock blues thing, total party, total blast. But being a bass player in a funk band, if you can find something that's more fun than that, I really want to know what it is.
Oh, I agree. I tell you, that music, the funk music, I was playing a lot in Billings at rock and roll bars, Grandma's, ZVO, 17 Club, all these bars that were playing rock and roll. And then, of course, funk came around. Or I guess you could call it disco more than funk. But it came around and then kind of took over everything. But you know what? I tell you what, I still love the groove of that music. And that's what you're saying. It was bass. It was drums.
Yeah.
It really was.
And
keyboards.
And the stuff up on top was whatever it is. And of course you got a vocal. Somebody comes up with a phrase and you sing it 200 times.
Yeah.
But the thumping underneath, man, that's
what you danced to was the bass and the kick and the drums.
There you go, man.
Yeah.
So that was I was really, really lucky with that.
Yeah, that was good. And that actually my next little thing I wanted to talk about was I think the first time I really ever heard you play was at the Shrine Auditorium in the basement. There was a battle of the bands, and I think you were playing
with Odyssey.
Was that with Odyssey?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
But Black and White Affair played there, right?
I don't
at that same night.
That.
Okay,
if they did, it probably would have been Robin Martinez playing bass. But I don't remember because I know that I did that. But that was really my first real gig.
Really?
That Battle of the
Well,
Bands.
I went just to see you because of Tom Aries and Cindy, and so we go down there, we listen to it, and I think you're right. That probably was Joe Link. I mean, I was so young.
Strong. He was so good, man. That guy. Yeah. Well, he's in Bucky Beaver now,
I know,
right?
And he's playing strong as ever.
Yeah.
Owns the golf course and stuff. But, and Wycherley, I think you're right. I think Wycherley was playing the drums.
Yeah.
So, and Sullivan was keyboards?
Joe Sullivan, yes, indeed.
Yeah.
And we did, in fact, just the other day I was back to the difference of back then you put on the album and you put the needle on the thing. I was driving back from Red Lodge and I ended up wanting to hear some Jeff Beck, and I dialed it up on my phone, and there was this thing, a Situation off the Rough and Ready.
Oh,
record.
yeah.
Remember
the song well.
Yeah. And I was like, oh my God, I think we did that song, if I'm not mistaken, in that band. And I remember, and I listened to it driving back. It was like you said earlier, this flashback. Oh my goodness. I forgot about that whole thing, Well, the one, Rod, man, the one to me, and of course it's all subjective, it's personal preference. Yeah. But in fact, Cindy Airy bought me it was the Jeff Beck group, the white record with the rows of pictures with the orange. And I put that record was changed my life. Yeah. So then you go back to it, 40 years later, and you go, oh my goodness, I forgot about this. You're scrolling through your streaming music, and you put it on, and there's like 4 or 5 incredible songs, and then 3 absolute guys. They're dogs. We got it. We got to finish the record. We don't have enough material. Do a 12-bar blues and just play. And so they did, and it was awful. It was awful.
Oh yeah. No, God, I've got some albums like that too. But on that Jeff Beck album, was that the album that had going down, down, down? Okay, that's why I remember, because I love that song.
Yeah,
that song's awesome.
So I learned, like all of us, you learn it off the Jeff Beck record.
Yeah.
Then years and years and years later, when I'm in New York and I'm on the blues circuit with, you take every gig you can when you're trying to feed people and you're living in a large urban environment. And then I started doing these blues gigs with these guys, and you get turned on to Freddie King, who wrote Going Down. Yeah. And you listen to the Freddie King version of Going Down, and you go, oh my goodness.
It's totally different.
Totally different and terrifyingly awesome.
Yeah.
Really the real deal.
Well, that's why those people remade it.
Yeah.
Because it was so good then.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's crazy. And that brings me back a long ways. But the Black and White Affair, when you were in the Black and White Affair, was that shortly before you moved out of town?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah. Because that was high school.
Yeah.
And that was, I think, through my junior year of high school. It's funny. Some of the guys, Ben Ripley, Lloyd Swords, Mark McGivney. We now that I've come back home, I'm in touch with everybody and trying to keep. And Ben called everybody up and said, "You guys, man, let's play. I got a bunch of charts," and so we've been kind of working through stuff. And he said,
awesome.
And I think Ben is so fun, man. I love that guy. He said, "I think we should call this band the Black and Gray Affair."
That's perfect. That's great. I went down to Walker's Grill. John Blair, which was a good friend of mine, of course, has passed away. But he says, "Hey, there's a jazz band down there, and Bill Honecker was playing, and then these couple guys from Helena playing sax. And then, do you remember the keyboard player that played with Vern Black in Sweet Talk? It was the name's gonna evade me right now, but anyway, so we go down and listen to him, and at that night it was a Black and White Affair reunion.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah, so McGivney, and I played with McGivney for a while too. McGivney and Swords and Martinez, and there was just everybody was down there, and it was like and of course back then I was real young and probably not in the scene as much, but I knew everybody.
Sure.
Just because.
Sure.
And boy, that was so fun. They didn't get up and play, but that was really fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then Vern Black, of course, to take you back a ways, what an exceptional guitar player.
Yeah.
And the nicest guy you'd ever met.
And an exceptional human being.
What was his girlfriend's name?
Carrie.
Carrie.
Yeah.
So we were playing out at the Airport Inn one night, and Steve Hink,
sure,
remember him? So he said, "Hey, I'm selling Vern a car, and he's going to be in town, and you guys playing?" I says, "Yeah." And then I knew Vern from my brother Les,
right?
And they were in theory class together, and he used to come over to the house. So Steve says, "Hey, well, they might come out and hear you guys." I said, "That sounds great." So I look out there, and I see Vern and Carrie walk in with Steve Hink, and he's got his soft gig bag, I thought, "Oh, this is going to be good." So he got up and played with us, and
awesome.
This was when I think at this point he might have been playing with Mariah Carey or something, but and that was really fun. But you played with a bunch of really famous people too, haven't you?
Well, I don't know. You.
Oh, don't be modest. Come on.
If you're in a place where people play and they call everybody else first and nobody else can make it, I guess you can end up on a stage sometimes.
That's humble of you, Mike. And I've heard you play, and I can see why they call you. So who did you play with out there?
Oh, geez, a bunch of people. Of people.
Yeah.
I was lucky. I got to do some stuff with. I got to record a little bit with Carole King.
No kidding.
On a thing that she did with, with this buddy of mine, this guy Paul Hitt, who's a tremendous. One of the most talented people I've ever met in my life.
Yeah.
Brilliant, devastating songwriter, great actor. He's out in Los Angeles doing the Hollywood thing.
Really.
And just tremendous human being. But it's all on my website. I can't. I got to do a bunch of stuff out there.
Yeah.
It was fun.
I bet.
It was a lot of fun.
So I heard a rumor that you played on the Letterman show.
I played with those guys.
Oh, you did. Okay.
But
okay.
I didn't ever play on the show itself.
Okay. Well, playing with those guys is probably just as good as doing it. Yeah. That's cool. What was his name? The keyboard player?
Paul Schaefer.
Yeah, Paul Schaefer.
I played with those guys a few times. Probably the one that sort of stuck out was one night they came. There was a rehearsal studio there on 28th Street in the Flower District in Manhattan, called Top Cat.
Okay.
And one night I had just finished playing with this. I was in this rock band with this woman, Helen Wheels. Albert Bouchard, the drummer from Blue Oyster Cult, was the drummer in that band.
I know the name.
And Tommy Marangello, who ended up working with Bob Dylan, doing a lot of
wow,
helping Dylan with stuff. But we had this rock band. We got finished playing, and Paul came in with Steve Jordan from that show, and Eddie Van Halen. They had just done the show.
Really?
And Danny Korchmar came in with them, and they were all going to go just jam and hang out. But and so Danny Korchmar was going to play bass, but he was like breaking up with some girl on the phone. So those guys kept waiting for him and waiting for him. I was sitting in the lobby going, I should just go in there and tell those guys I'll play bass if they need a bass player. And Paul came out, and I told him, hey, man, if you need somebody just to hold down the low end until he gets done breaking up with the girl he keeps yelling at on the phone, I'll do it. And he said, okay, come on. So I got to, that was, but that was just a jam. You know, that wasn't like
but that's
playing live or anything.
That's great. I wish I could do something like that.
Boy, I'll tell you, Eddie Van Halen, there was a point, we switched instruments, and he picked up my bass, and I've got this 65 Candy Apple Red P bass that I've played for fed my children with, and he picked that thing up and did his finger tapping thing on the bass, and it was one of the most devastating things I've ever heard. Wow. That guy, you know, there are those very, very, very few musicians who, I think sometimes God sits up on his cloud, and he'll get bored in the afternoon, and he'll go, you know, I think, and there'll be all these people being born, and he'll go, I think just for laughs, I'm going to make that one right there really special. I think he did that.
I do too. You know, I remember the first time I ever heard that album, Van Halen, just, you know, their first album, and with Eruption on it. And I was in Seattle, and I was staying at my sister's house, my sister Leanne's house.
Right.
And that album, Rock 100 or 102 or something out there, were playing it. And they say, hey, this brand new band, guitar player that just is taking over the world is playing. And they played that whole album. And I'm a guitar player, and I'm young. Got to remember, I'm like,
right.
And that was like 72.
Yes. Yeah.
I was 12, right? And so I listened to that and went, oh my God, that is just amazing, you know?
Yeah.
And so for you to sit there and play with them, that's amazing.
That was a lot of fun.
That's got to be fun.
That was a lot of fun.
Yeah. And then of course we talked about this too, but you played with Rick Derringer, which is one of my guitar heroes.
Understandably
and so I've got to talk about it, you know.
Okay.
So you know, we backed him up. You know, at the 17 Club, we played before him, and then of course I saw him a few times in town. But he's still to this day probably one of the most influential people in my guitar playing. So tell me about that.
I was sitting there one day and the phone rang. Excuse me. And it was this guy, his manager, this guy Teddy Slatus, called me up and he said, "Listen, Steve Hawley, who was this drummer I'd been working with, Steve was in Paul McCartney's band. He was on the Back to the Egg record. Yeah.
No kidding.
Yeah, but he moved to New York and was doing what you do. You take every gig, and I ended up on a bunch of different things with him. And you know, there's that chemistry that happens between bass players and drummers.
Oh, absolutely.
Other people just don't. It's not. It's kind of hard to explain it or quantify it, I guess.
But it's magical when it does.
When it happens.
Yeah,
and Steve was one of those guys. He's just such a great musician. You could pretty much do anything with him and it'll sound great.
Right.
But Teddy Slatus asked him, you know, I need a bass player for Rick. And Steve gave him my name. And so Teddy called up and said, Rick's going to call you. And then came home a few days later and, you know, but this was back in the days of answering machines with that little micro cassette thing. And you push play, and it's like, hey, listen, man, it's Rick Derringer, and they gave me your number. And so I went up and hung out with him one day. He lived up in Connecticut, just north of New York City.
Okay.
At that point. And went up and played for a while, and he was like, yeah, man, let's do this. So I got to work with Rick for, I think it was probably almost 2 years.
Really?
I got to do one of his records. We did.
You recorded?
Yeah, we did this record called "Tend to Fire." That I believe, I don't know if it's. I think it might be available in Europe or something. I don't know, but it was.
It's not here though.
I don't
Well, I'll
know.
find out tonight.
I don't know.
I guarantee
I
if
don't
it's
know.
on the internet, I'll find out tonight.
I don't know. It's you know that thing after you record something, the last thing you ever want to do is listen to it. You know.
Yeah, I do know that.
You know, it's like we did that. That's done. It's like moving. That's like going backwards. Almost.
I know. Do you ever sit there and think, well, if I could do that again, I would do it this way?
Well, that's okay.
Yeah,
and
that's exactly what you're saying.
That's the opposite side of that coin. It's no matter what you listen to that you've done, you go, oh God, I know what's coming. I know what I did coming up in the second verse. What was I thinking? Well, I wasn't. I was playing, but
right. But you're the only one that would think that. So.
There's probably a lot of people
I don't know
that might think that. I don't know about that.
Well, that's really cool. So, are you good friends with him?
Rick, I called Rick. In fact, the guy who produced that record passed away here. He was up in Bozeman. Geez, it must have been last spring.
Really?
Late winter, early spring, working on that. They were doing some TV show or movie up there, and he was doing the music. His name was Peter Fish. He was a big jingle writer.
I've heard of that name.
Yeah.
I wonder.
Yeah, and he died of a heart attack here in Montana.
Oh wow!
And so I called Rick and told him, and we caught up. I hadn't talked to Rick in a while,
Yeah.
He's living in Florida now.
You said he's doing some like maybe Christian music. Or?
Here's what I'd heard. I haven't dialed it up because I don't really. I've got a sort of a very scaled down version of the stuff I listen to now.
Yeah.
But I heard through the grapevine that Rick has taken a lot of his old hits, Rock and Roll Hoochie Coo and Still Alive and Well.
Right.
And he's changed the lyrics in there to reflect his, I guess, new Christian faith.
Yeah.
If I understand what I was told correctly.
Yeah.
So
it'll be interesting. I'll have to look out for it. So I'm going to ask you a couple questions. I've got a big list of questions here, but this is funner just talking about stuff. So you left Billings, and then you went. Didn't you go to school?
Yeah.
Okay.
I went to school in Boston.
Boston, yeah. And what was it? Music?
It was
music major.
There's a music school there called Berkeley.
Berkeley, yeah. Well, of course, everybody's heard of that.
I got into there by hook or by crook.
Because it's hard to get in there, isn't it?
Well, back then it wasn't. It was a totally different ball game back in 1975.
Okay.
If you could play a note, you were in.
Well, I know you could do that.
And it was long ago, so it was very inexpensive.
Yeah.
And it was an easy thing to do. Excuse me. And I was lucky. I got a little bit of scholarship stuff over there too. So. But I was really lucky to get to go there and get experience, exposure, and get the experience of watching. You know how it is. We all grew up here, and you think that what's here is what it is. And then, for example, when I got there, I went to my first bass lesson, and my teacher, this guy Neil Steubenhaus, who sort of became the Will Lee of Los Angeles afterwards, told me, "Here's your first homework assignment. Is tonight you got to go down to," there was these two jazz clubs in the basement down, I believe, at Boylston Street, Paul's Mall and the Jazz Workshop. And it was one of those two. He said, you got to go down there and you're going to listen. There's a guy down there playing tonight. His name is Elvin Jones. And I was like, from Billings, Montana. I go down there and heard Elvin Jones. And I had no idea music could be something like that.
No kidding.
And then I had, got exposed to a lot of that kind of stuff and realized I really had a lot of work to do.
Well, your horizons must have just opened up.
Indeed.
Being from Billings and then going to New York where there's millions and millions of people and millions of musicians, right?
Yeah. But it's funny. It's like everywhere. There's more people.
Yeah.
So there's more, there's more musicians, there's more cement finishers, there's more airline pilots, there's more everything of whatever you'd be,
Absolutely.
And, but you learn a lot about people.
Yeah.
When you live in a place where there's 12 million of them.
And you rub shoulders every day with them, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know?
Did you ever do studio work there? Did you do a bunch of that?
Yeah, I was really lucky because, well, one of my best friends of my life from that school ended up going to New York, and we played a lot and did a bunch of things, and then he became a staff writer at one of the jingle houses, and he used me to play bass on just tons and tons of stuff. I mean, he used everybody, but I got to be in on a bunch of stuff that was really fun. And then from that, you sort of get known in those circles, and so you end up getting asked to do a lot of that kind of thing. And honestly, doing session work, I think, is kind of, I ended up, in many ways, that might be one of the most fun things, at least for me,
really, as
an individual to do, because it's like you get to sit in a room with really good musicians, and they'll hand out the way that would work is they would do like a Pepsi commercial,
right? And
they'd call you the night before and say, could you be at whichever studio at like 10 o'clock? So you show up at 10 o'clock, and then you're with these guys, and the guy would have written out, more often than not, on a piece of paper, it would say A7, D7, G7, C7, and then and a 4, and hit everybody hold a whole note C, and then we'll do an ending that goes ba-da-da-da-da-da. So you hand that out, and you sit with guys, and then you go, well, should we do it as a shuffle, or should we straight, or let's try this as a country thing, or as a, let's do it as a rumba, or whatever. So you get to do 2 or 3, you do that, and in about 10 minutes, everybody works on and makes it an arrangement. And then you record it, and then, well, it was cool because, so they called you at 10, well, then you're done by 10:30.
No kidding.
And then, even though they had to book you, because it's a union thing, so they had to book you a minimum of 3 hours.
Oh.
So then, but you're done early, so then as you're walking out the door, and these places were there'd be like a dozen or 15 different people writing, trying to do that same Pepsi. Whoever got their music got picked that day. So there's all this competition within that particular, what's called a jingle house.
Yeah.
And then one of the other guys, because you're walking out the door, and they would say, hey, what are you doing at 1? So then you'd show back up to his at 1, and his would be a different thing.
Yeah.
His would be this written out thing that would be, but super. And then you get down the different group of guys, or some of the same ones, or whatever. And then, it just becomes something that's another way to put food on the table.
That would be totally an experience. I mean, to me, I've never done anything like that, so that's cool. I mean, that would be really an experience, especially working with all the different musicians. And then the way you say it, just put it together. It's probably like a lot of bands write music. Hey, I got this idea. It's in A, and then it just forms.
Very similar.
Yeah, that's
very,
cool.
Very much.
I like that. Well, I'm going to do that tomorrow night. So,
cool.
The next thing I was going to ask you, who are you playing with right now? Because you're playing. I know you're busy.
Pretty much everybody.
I know. I know. I've heard you with a couple different venues already, and so.
For example, tomorrow night I'm playing with. There's this brilliant duo group. This guy David Pyland and this woman Christina Temple have a thing. He's from Texas, she's from Montana, so they call their duo Texana.
Oh, I like it.
And Lloyd Marsh is playing drums with that. Okay. Dennis Nedick Simmons is playing guitar. I'm playing bass. Ilana Hayden might be singing, depending on her voice, on what, if she's feeling up to it. She's got a little bit of a chest cold going today.
Oh boy, yeah.
And then that's at the R Bar, and then Saturday
R Bar in Bozeman.
The R Bar or R Lounge or whatever they call it down at the convention center.
Oh yeah, the Fire Pit Lounge, whatever. Yeah,
I don't know what it's called.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
And then Saturday night, Eric Olson, Nick Kozub, Parker Brown. Have put this band back together that they had apparently it was starting to blow up pretty big right before COVID, called Hell Roaring. And Hell Roaring is playing we're at Craft Local Saturday night.
Oh, really?
And we're doing 7 to 9 or 10 or something over there. And I'm doing that. I've been working with Lloyd Marsh. He's got of course the band here in town called Brick House.
Yeah,
and
he's one of my favorite people.
I love that guy. I love that guy too. Yeah. And I contend wholeheartedly, if Lloyd ran for mayor of Billings, he'd win.
I know.
He'd wipe the floor with the competition. I'd go be his campaign manager. I'd put signs in people's lawns whether they wanted them or not.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, great guy. That's good. That sounds like
Lloyd's been doing Brick House, and we've been having a blast with that. Because that's back to what we were saying before, is he plays every wonderful funk R&B tune that was ever written.
Yeah.
And he plays them. He's so good. He's so strong, and so you just love the guy. And he sings
got so much charisma.
Yeah, and he sings, and so on some of them he'll play keys up front.
Yeah.
And then sing, and then he'll hire a different drummer. Luke Kessner's done it a bunch of times, and then. And it's just, man, that's been so much fun doing that.
Oh, I bet. I bet that is. I went and heard you down at, what's that, Levity?
Yeah.
You were playing with, Lloyd was playing drums, and Joe Link was playing keyboards, and saxophone was the guy that teaches over at the school over here.
Maybe Scott Jeppesen or Sam Woodis might have been playing.
Yeah. I think it was Sam Wood. Does he teach over at that Ben Steele?
Oh no, you're talking about Thomas Burke.
That's it. Yeah, that's right.
Thomas
Burke, yeah.
Thomas is pretty much I guess unless he can't do it, and then Lloyd calls somebody else. But Thomas Burke has been in Brick House for a long time.
That's what I thought. But I had such a good time.
Yeah,
I mean, it was so fun, and the energy that came off of the stage, and then I think that has a lot to do with Lloyd and then of course Joe. I mean, there's nobody like Joe.
Yeah,
As Joe Sullivan is just God. I've known him since I was young, but he's got that personality too. Sitting up.
I learned how to play music with that guy. We sat in the basement. Yeah. And we played A7 chords. So we'll play in A, and we would just jam for hours.
I bet.
And learn how to, no, that note doesn't work at all with these other notes, does it?
Yeah. That's great.
That whole thing.
He's another one of my favorite people. I've just known him so long. I
love that guy.
Yeah, my brother played with him back when I was in junior high then too.
Did he?
Yeah.
Les did.
Yeah, Les and Joe. It was Les and Joe, and I don't know if I knew any of the other guys, but other than Pat Rogers, because they practice in Pat Rogers' basement.
And that's where we would do those A chord jams.
Is that right? Yeah.
It was in Pat Rogers' basement over in Gorham Park.
Yep, right across the street.
Yeah, man.
But anyway, that's when I met Joe, and I got to know him so good, and then we're very good friends now. But great musician, man. I love the guy to death.
So I'm doing those. I've been playing a lot of jazz since I got back. I've been working a lot with Eric Olson and Alex Nauman on some stuff. Matt Devitt's done some. Costas called up here a little bit ago,
really?
And Matt Devitt and I went up to Bozeman and we played on a thing for some people, and it was Costas' gig, and we went up and played, and that was real. That guy, man. What a songwriter.
He's a magical guy, man.
Yeah.
I don't know him very well, but he dated one of my best friend's sister, Tom Stewart, and his older sister dated Costas, and I met him a bunch of times there. Mm-hmm. But he was just kind of rising, to his songwriting fame down there in Nashville. But nice guy. Very talented.
It's when I came back after being in Boston, before I went to New York, came back here and started my family and everything. But I was playing with Costas for a while with Chuck Hamilton and Bob Packwood.
Oh, Bob Packwood. That's what I was talking about down there. Anyway, go ahead.
And it was wild because that was really like my very first band that I toured in.
Yeah.
And I didn't really know that. I mean, my from that, I thought, in fact, I played with them before I went back to Boston too. And I didn't understand. I thought that you just, being in a band meant you were in a band with somebody who wrote these brilliant songs. So then you just went out and you played them. And drove around and played those songs. And I didn't know that was totally unheard of, completely catching lightning in a bottle. And it doesn't work like that. But that's what I thought it was for the longest time because of that, you know.
Well, there's something about Costas. I mean, you know him much better than me, and I only met him a few times, but when I met that guy, he always seemed like there was this like whoa around him. You know what I mean? And I don't know how to explain it or anything. But then I found out, guy goes down to Nashville, writes a bunch of country songs, number ones there and there and there, writing music all over the place. So evidently that was true.
Well, you saw it.
I did.
You saw that, and you can, for someone who's like sensitive and kind of attuned to other than just what's in front of us, you can see that when that's coming off of people.
Oh yeah, it was amazing, and that super successful guy.
Yeah,
he's doing well, and that's great that you played with them and you know them, but see, I think you know a whole bunch of people like that because you're pretty talented, Mike.
Well,
I've heard you play, and you're very good. So.
Rod, you're a very kind man to hold the bar low for me like that.
No, I'm not.
I can just clear it. Thank you for that.
You're very humble, and I like that.
No, I appreciate that because it makes it easier for me to not look as stupid as I could.
Well, I'm just going to tell you. So I'm in here earlier tonight talking to my wife, and she goes, "Are you nervous?" I said, "Yeah, I'm kind of nervous." I said, "I'm going to interview Mike, and man, I got the ultimate respect for this guy." And so,
well, that's really kind. Straight back at you, man.
Well, thank you, man. But this is a pleasure, and I really appreciate you taking out your time to do this. So,
man, the pleasure's mine.
Yeah. So I got a couple more notes here.
Sure.
And the next one I want to know is just what's your favorite rig? What bass do you like the best? I've got guitars, and I don't know which one of these is my best.
Well, I think it depends what it is that you're doing on it.
Yeah.
You're doing are we doing a period piece? Is this supposed to sound like a 1963 Beatle record? Right. Or is it supposed to sound like a 2014 death metal rumba?
I thought those were the same.
Is it a Buck Owens record, or are we doing a Mariah Carey shuffle?
This goes back to the talent that you have, because if I was gonna do a Buck Owens thing, it would sound exactly like I was doing maybe some Ted Nugent. And if I was
believe that for a second.
And if I was doing Mariah Carey, it might sound like I was doing, I don't know. But so do you play a bunch of different rigs then? A bunch of different basses?
I got a bunch of different basses. Yeah. 99 times out of 100. When I play out now here, and for the last couple of years before I left New York, if it's an electric gig, I bring two basses. I bring they're the same exact thing. The Fender 62 reissue jazz basses. I got flat wound strings on one of them, round wound strings on one of them. I got them set up the same, completely different sound.
Yeah, right.
And so what ends up happening is on certain songs I'll play the round wound thing because you need a brighter, more of a point on the note.
Right.
And then on certain songs, I'll play the flat wounds because it gives you more of the woof without the ding of the note up on top. Depends what the song is, Yeah. What it's not about me. It's about what's best for the song. It's about what the singer wants, or the whoever's playing the melody, the instrumentalist. It's about them. My job is to hold them up. Yeah. My job is to not be visible.
Yeah.
My job is to be invisible, so that people, when they hear the song, they hear the song. They don't go, "Oh, wow, what a bass thing! That was a snappy little, Palladium cue he just played on with a." That's not what I should do, man.
But see, that's got to be part of the the background that you got. I mean, the professionalism and all that stuff is that it's not so much, hey, this is Mike. This is hey, I'm playing this, and this is what I'm gonna make it sound like, right?
Well, yes, because the goal is to feed people.
Yeah.
And in New York City, if you don't do everything perfectly, you're not getting called back.
Right.
Because there's a ton of guys who will do it perfectly. Billings I love Billings, man. I'm so happy to be home again.
That's great.
I'm so happy to be here.
We're excited to have you back.
Well, it's kind of you to speak for everybody. I'm not sure they all. I don't know how much all of them agree with you. Though.
You know, I've got to tell you, and this is just to stroke your pride, I guess. But so I've been starting this podcast, and I've been talking to a bunch of musicians. I just had Art Eichler here from Hanson Music, and my brother Les. He's out in Seattle, and even a couple other people. And I'm talking about this podcast, and every single one of them says, "Hey, Mike's back in town. You gotta get Mike." So guess who's number 2? No.
Well, and a lot of times that's me. It's number 2.
No,
if I
that's
don't
not
play
what I
well,
meant.
if I don't play well, it sounds like number 2. That's number 1. So
everybody's got a number 1. I tell you, but I'm super happy that you took this time.
Well, thanks for asking me to do this, Rod. It's great to just get to hang with you and check the clubhouse out. My goodness, man, you have dialed this thing in to the nth degree here.
Well, thank you.
It's really cool.
It's kind of just something I love to do. So, okay, I've got just 2 more questions.
Whatever, man.
These are the good ones. So, this is the funnest part of this podcast.
Okay.
Is I want to hear your favorite story about anything you've done playing, and then your worst one. So these are the 2 funnest things. So your worst memory and your favorite story about playing. It don't matter what it is. It doesn't have to be music even. It could be something in Georgia that you did.
Okay, let's start with the worst.
Okay, that sounds fine.
The worst was, and it really wasn't that big a deal. It was just disappointing.
Sure.
I was in the house band. There was a jam that happened at a place called Manny's Car Wash on 3rd Avenue up on the Upper East Side in Manhattan.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the night after the night of the Grammys.
Wow.
And there's a guitar player from Foreigner, the songwriter guy.
Oh, the main guy.
I'm blanking on his name right now.
I can't think of it right now
on the
either.
spot. Came in with Stephen Stills.
Oh,
and
really?
they got up to play. And so I got to play with those guys. It was really fun.
Yeah.
And and we got done, and it was actually really cool. Stephen Stills is a really good blues guitarist.
Really?
Surprisingly.
Fantastic singer, too. But yeah.
You listen to a lot of the stuff that those guys did, and it wasn't really that at all. But he could play the blues. And I got done, and I was like, it was so much fun to meet you, man. Thank you so much. And I went to shake his hand, and he just looked at me and turned around and walked away.
Oh no. Well,
so that was, but I learned later that's pretty much who the guy is. That's how he rolls.
Yeah,
but probably one of the nicest things anybody ever said to me was, I got to play with Bernard Purdy on some stuff.
Wow.
And we got done, and Bernard Purdy came over and he put his arm around my shoulder. He said, man, you listen really well. And I was like, wow. That was, that to me, because that's really what it's about,
Oh, yeah.
Playing music is not, it's a funny thing, it's kind of misnamed, because playing music is about 93% listening to what's going on around you. And about 7%
Boy, do I agree with that.
of actually doing something with your fingers,
Yeah.
If you don't listen, what are you doing?
You're soloing.
You're right.
Yeah.
It's like, dude, shut up.
Yeah.
you know?
Right.
So I don't
That's
know.
awesome.
Those spring to mind. I guess.
Yeah. It's crazy being a musician. I've been doing it all my life, and there's a few people that I have to give credit to, and you're actually one of them. Gary Contreras, John Blair, Bob Packwood, Vern Black, and you. And you're probably one of the earlier ones, just because of the time when I met you, what formed me. I forever thank you for that.
Well, thank
I really
you,
do.
Rod. Thank you so much, man. You put me in really good company with that list of people. I wouldn't be the player I am if I hadn't have got to play with Vern Black when we were kids.
I believe it.
And I saw John Blair down twice, once at the Shrine with what was the name of the band? The drummer from Denver. Who
was it Opera Knockety?
Opera Knockety.
I loved that band.
And I saw him down at Pioneer Park one day.
Many Moons?
I think it was Many Moons.
Yeah.
And if I'm not mistaken, they opened with Help. And
that sounds
just blew me away, man.
Every one of those deserves their own podcast.
Totally.
But
absolutely, man. Yeah. That's high company you're mentioning there. Those guys, every one of those guys, I would go around town and look at them and go, how am I ever gonna do this, man?
I know.
Someday
I'm gonna be like that,
right?
Right?
Exactly. That is so cool that your parents were into it enough
they were my best supporters.
That's brilliant, man. That's
my dad
beautiful.
bought me a drum set when I was 9 years old, so I was in 3rd grade. And that probably was his biggest mistake, because I'm a guitar player. Can you imagine what that sounded like?
Well, truly, I think if a person really wants to develop as a musician, you like it or not, you got to sit at the piano and start to just begin to understand how that instrument thinks. Yeah. But the other thing you got to do is play the drums.
Yeah.
Is you got to be able to play
for the rhythm.
Just simple, rock beat, the different beats, a shuffle, a straight, what have you.
Absolutely.
Because if you can do that, it makes whatever other instrument you play, you understand how to snap the puzzle pieces rhythmically together.
Yep.
You're not just hunting and pecking in the
I
dark.
agree. I mean, drums. I still play drums, and I love them. I'm not great, but I sure like. It's just there's something about it that makes you feel whole when you're playing drums.
Yeah.
But sure love music.
Yeah, man.
Sure glad I've been doing it.
You and me both.
Yeah.
And listen, I can't wait let's record this thing.
That's going to be great. And so Tim's coming over tomorrow, and we're recording that song of mine. And then, can you send this to me?
Sure.
Okay, send it to me. I'll give you my email, and then I'll send it to him. He's a great lyricist. He writes lyrics.
Well, have him write some lyrics to it.
I will.
If it's something that
we'll get the body down, and then we'll figure out what's going on.
Yeah. Cool.
Sounds great. I'd love to.
Cool.
And then you'll like it in here. It sounds good. This room sounds great.
Let's play, man. I mean, look at what you've done here.
Yeah.
This is, you like I say, you've really put together an A1 clubhouse.
It is a clubhouse. But, boys only. That's not the way it is. Let's let them all in. So, all right, Mike. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, man.
Yeah, this is
pleasure
great.
hanging with you.
And I'll let you know, but it should be up within a week.
Cool.
Thank you so much.
Cool. Thank you.
Love it. It was great.